I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. That night in a crowded Manhattan restaurant, I watched my daughter's tears fall onto the white tablecloth while her husband's hand was still tangled in her hair. His father was clapping, actually clapping, and I understood in that moment that there are silences that kill just as surely as any weapon. My name is Amelia Morrison. I'm 58 years old, a widow, and for most of my life I believed that keeping the peace was more important than speaking the truth. But that night, that terrible, beautiful night, something inside me shattered. And when I stood up from that table, I made a choice that would either save my daughter's life or destroy what was left of our family forever. This is the story of how I learned that sometimes love means breaking the silence no matter the cost. The reservation was for 7 o'clock at Marcello's, one of those upscale Italian places in the financial district where the tablecloths are linen and the waiters speak in hushed voices like they're sharing secrets. My daughter Mia had called 3 days earlier, her voice tight with something I couldn't quite name. "Mom, Marcus wants to have a family dinner for Ethan's birthday." I'd held the phone closer, listening to what she wasn't saying. "That's wonderful, honey. Should I bring anything?" "Just yourself." A pause too long. "Marcus's parents will be there too. Gerald and Patricia Thornton." I felt my stomach clench but kept my voice light. "Of course, I'll see you Saturday." After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time looking at the photo on my refrigerator. Mia, at 8 years old, covered in sawdust, holding up the birdhouse she'd built in our garage. Her smile was so wide it seemed to split her face in two. "Birds need a safe place too, Mom," she'd told me so seriously. "Everyone deserves somewhere they can feel safe." That little girl had grown up to be an architect. She'd designed award-winning buildings, created spaces that made people feel protected and at peace. But now at 32, I barely recognized her. I pulled my mother's handkerchief from my purse drawer, white linen with her initials embroidered in the corner. My grandmother had made it for her in 1952. I pressed it to my face and breathed in, even though any trace of my mother's perfume had long since faded. "Give me strength," I whispered. Saturday arrived with a light rain, the kind that makes the city streets shine like mirrors. I dressed carefully in my navy dress, the one my husband Edward had given me for our last anniversary before the heart attack took him. 3 years ago now, but some days it felt like yesterday. I touched my wedding ring still on my left hand. "I could use your help tonight, Edward. I don't know what I'm walking into, but something's wrong. I can feel it." The taxi dropped me at Marcello's 15 minutes early. I've always been punctual. Edward used to joke that I'd arrive early to my own funeral. The thought made me smile, then immediately made my eyes sting with tears. Inside the restaurant was elegant in that understated way that screams money. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light over tables draped in crisp white linen. Classical music played so quietly you had to strain to hear it. The kind of place where even your whispers felt too loud. "Reservation for Thornton," I told the hostess. She led me to a round table near the window. From here I could see the rain-slicked street, the blur of yellow taxis, the hurried pedestrians with their umbrellas like moving flowers. I ordered water and waited, my hands folded in my lap over my mother's handkerchief. Mia arrived 10 minutes later. I saw them through the window first, Mia and Marcus, his hand on the small of her back as they approached the entrance. He was saying something and she was nodding that quick automatic nod that made my chest tighten. When they walked in, I stood up, my arms already reaching for my daughter. But what I saw made me freeze. Mia was wearing a cream-colored sweater with long sleeves despite the May warmth. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, not a single strand out of place. She'd always worn her hair loose, said she felt trapped with it pulled back. And her makeup, it was perfect. Too perfect. The kind of careful perfection that's trying to hide something. "Mom," she came to me with that smile, the one that doesn't quite reach the eyes. The one I'd been seeing more and more over the past 2 years. I hugged her and felt how thin she'd become, how her shoulder blades pressed sharp against my palms like bird wings trying to escape. "Honey, it's so good to see you." I pulled back to look at her face. There were shadows under her eyes, carefully concealed with makeup. "You look beautiful." "Thank you, Mom. You too." Her voice was soft, almost apologetic, as if existing in this space required permission. Marcus stepped forward, all charm and white teeth. He was a handsome man, I'd give him that. 6 feet tall, dark hair, perfectly styled, wearing what I'd learned was called a power suit in that deep charcoal that screamed success. He worked as an engineer for some big firm in Midtown. Made good money, drove a nice car, lived in a house that probably cost more than I'd earn in 3 lifetimes. Amelia, good to see you. He didn't move to hug me. We shook hands instead, his grip just a little too firm, a little too long. Establishing dominance, Edward would have said. Edward had never liked Marcus much, though he'd been too polite to say so directly. Marcus, thank you for organizing this dinner. Of course, family is important. He pulled out Mia's chair before I could sit down. Here, honey, you must be exhausted. Mia slid into the chair like she was afraid of making too much noise, of taking up too much space. I sat across from her and tried to catch her eye, but she was studying the menu as if it held the secrets to the universe. Where's Ethan? I asked. I brought his birthday present. With a sitter, Marcus answered before Mia could speak. This is an adult evening. 3-year-olds don't have the patience for fine dining. Something in his tone made it clear this wasn't up for discussion. I looked at Mia, but she just nodded. That makes sense, she said quietly. He gets restless. But it was Ethan's birthday. Why wasn't he here before I could ask Marcus's parents arrived? Gerald Thornton entered Marcello's like he owned it, and for all I knew, maybe he did. He was a large man in his late 60s with silver hair swept back from a florid face and a voice that seemed to carry across 3 counties, even when he was trying to whisper. He wore an expensive suit that couldn't quite hide his bulk, and he walked with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his entire life. Family, he boomed. His arms spread wide like he was addressing a political rally. Marcus immediately stood up, and I saw something in his face shift, a kind of eager-to-please expression that reminded me of a dog waiting for its master's approval. Dad, Mom, you made it. Of course we made it. Wouldn't miss celebrating my grandson's birthday. Gerald's eyes swept over the table and landed on me. Amelia, still dressing like a schoolteacher, I see. The words were said with a laugh as if it was a joke we all shared, but his eyes were cold, assessing. I felt myself being measured and found wanting. Gerald, I said evenly. Patricia. Patricia Thornton slipped into view behind her husband like a shadow. She was thin in that brittle way that spoke of too many skipped meals and too much white wine. Her hair was blonde, obviously colored and styled within an inch of its life. She wore a gray dress that probably cost $1,000 and looked like a sack. But it was her eyes that got me. They were blank empty, like someone had scooped out everything inside and left only the shell. Hello, Amelia, she said softly, not quite meeting my gaze. Patricia, it's good to see you. She nodded and sat down next to Gerald, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on the table. In all the times I'd seen this woman at Mia's wedding, at Ethan's christening, at various holiday dinners, I'd never heard her voice and opinion, never seen her smile with genuine warmth, never witnessed her contradict her husband even once. 50 years of marriage, Mia had told me once. 50 years of saying yes, dear, and whatever you think is best. Looking at her now, I wondered what dream she'd given up to become this pale ghost of a woman. The waiter appeared with menus and his practiced smile. Good evening. Can I start you off with something to drink? Whiskey double, Gerald ordered without looking at the menu. And bring a pitcher of water with ice. White wine for me, Marcus said. White wine for me too, I added. The waiter turned to Mia. And for you, ma'am. I watched my daughter's face as she looked at the menu, then at Marcus, then back at the menu. It was such a small thing ordering a drink, but I could see the calculation in her eyes, trying to figure out what was safe, what wouldn't cause a problem. White wine, she started to say, then stopped. Actually, I'll have red. The Cabernet, please. It happened so fast I almost missed it. Marcus's head snapped toward her, his hand tightening on his water glass. Gerald let out a dry laugh. Marcus's voice was soft, controlled, but something underneath it made my skin prickle. Mia, I ordered fish. Red wine doesn't pair with fish. Oh, Mia's face flushed. I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking. You never think. He said it casually, like he was commenting on the weather, but Mia flinched as if he'd struck her. The waiter stood frozen, his pen hovering over his notepad. I jumped in, trying to smooth things over. It doesn't matter. We can always change it, right? Or maybe Mia would prefer fish too. Gerald cut me off with a wave of his hand. Leave it, Amelia. Marcus is right. Women today don't even know how to order a glass of wine properly. In my day, a wife asked her husband what he was having before ordering anything. He said it with a self-satisfied smile like he'd just shared some great wisdom. I felt anger bloom in my chest, hot and sudden, but I swallowed it down. "I'll have white wine," Mia said quickly, her voice small. "I wasn't thinking. White is fine." "Are you sure, honey?" I asked, trying to catch her eye. "If you want red, white is fine, Mom. Really." She finally looked at me, and what I saw in her eyes made my breath catch. It was fear. My daughter was afraid. The waiter scribbled on his pad and retreated like he was escaping a fire. An uncomfortable silence settled over the table. Marcus picked up his phone and started scrolling through emails. Gerald launched into a story about something that had happened at his country club. Patricia stared at her water glass like it held the answers to questions she was too afraid to ask. And Mia sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her shoulders hunched slightly forward as if trying to make herself smaller. I couldn't take my eyes off her. When had my vibrant, confident daughter become this frightened shadow? When had I stopped noticing? As she reached for the breadbasket, her sleeve rode up just a few inches. Just enough. My heart stopped. On her wrist, barely visible beneath the edge of her sweater, were bruises. Yellowish green, the color of bruises that were healing but not quite healed. And the pattern, I knew that pattern. I'd seen it once before years ago when I volunteered at a women's shelter while Edward was still alive. Those were fingerprints. Someone had grabbed her wrist hard enough to leave marks. "Mia," I said, my voice coming out strange and tight. She immediately pulled her sleeve down, her eyes wide with panic. "It's nothing, Mom." "Let me see." I said, "It's nothing." Her voice was sharp now, desperate. "I'm clumsy. I bumped into the door." She was lying. I could see it in every line of her body, hear it in the tremor of her voice. Marcus looked up from his phone, his eyes moving between us. "Is something wrong?" "No," Mia said quickly. "Nothing. Mom was just asking about Ethan." "Ethan is fine," Marcus said, his tone making it clear the subject was closed. He put his phone face down on the table. "Amelia Mia tells me you've been volunteering at that community center in Queens. How's that going?" He was changing the subject, steering us into safer waters, and I let him because Mia was looking at me with such desperate pleading in her eyes that I couldn't do anything else. But I didn't forget what I'd seen. A mother never forgets. The conversation moved on to safer topics, my volunteer work, the weather, Marcus's latest project at work, but I barely heard any of it. In my mind, I was somewhere else remembering. Mia was born on a spring morning 32 years ago, arriving 3 weeks early and screaming bloody murder the entire way. Edward had held her in his arms in that hospital room, this tiny red-faced creature with her fists clenched tight, and he'd looked at me with tears in his eyes. "This girl is going to change the world, Amelia. Look at her. She's a fighter." And she was. God, she was. Mia was the kind of child who took apart every toy to see how it worked, who asked 1,000 questions and wasn't satisfied until she understood the answer. She climbed trees and scraped her knees and came home covered in mud laughing. When she was 8, the age Ethan was now, she'd found a wounded bird in our backyard. A sparrow with a broken wing. She'd insisted we take it to the vet, had used her allowance money to pay for the treatment. And while the bird was healing in a box in our garage, she'd built it a house. I can still see her covered in sawdust, her tongue sticking out in concentration as she hammered pieces of scrap wood together. It wasn't perfect, one wall was crooked and the roof leaked when it rained, but it had a door and windows and a little perch. "See, Mom," she'd said, her face shining with pride. "Birds need a safe place too. Everyone deserves somewhere they can feel safe." We'd set the birdhouse in the backyard, and when the sparrow's wing healed, Mia had released it right next to her creation. The bird had flown up to a branch, looked back at us, and then flown away into the sky. Mia had cried, but she'd also smiled. "It's okay to be sad when something you love leaves," Edward had told her, kneeling down to her level. "But you gave that bird what it needed to survive. You gave it shelter and care and time to heal. That's what love does, sweetheart. Real love gives people what they need to fly." Mia had nodded, wiping her tears on her sleeve, and I'd thought, yes, that's who my daughter is. Someone who builds safe places. Someone who helps broken things heal. That girl had grown up loving architecture the way some people love music or art. She'd filled notebooks with sketches of houses and buildings and bridges. She'd gotten a full scholarship to Cooper Union, had graduated with honors, had landed a job at one of the most prestigious firms in the city. At 26, she'd had her own apartment in Brooklyn, her own life, her own future stretched out before her like a highway with no speed limit. She'd been free. And then she'd met Marcus. The food arrived, interrupting my memories. The waiter placed plates in front of us with the kind of reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. The fish did look beautiful. I'd give it that seared scallops on a bed of risotto garnished with microgreens that probably cost more than my electric bill. "Looks delicious," Gerald announced, digging in without waiting for anyone else. Marcus cut his food with precision, each piece exactly the same size. I watched him trying to figure out what it was about him that had always bothered me. He was handsome, successful, polite. On paper, he was everything a mother could want for her daughter. But there was something in his eyes, something cold and calculating, that made me think of a snake sizing up a mouse. Mia barely touched her food. She pushed the scallops around her plate, rearranging them into different patterns, but never actually taking a bite. "Mia, honey, you should eat something," I said gently. "I'm not very hungry, Mom." "She's on a diet," Gerald interjected around a mouthful of risotto. "Women are always on diets, aren't they? Even when they don't need to be." He said it like it was a compliment, but I saw Mia shrink a little further into herself. "You look fine, honey," I told her. "Beautiful, actually." "Thank you, Mom." She took a tiny bite of risotto, chewing it slowly like she had to concentrate on the act of swallowing. Patricia hadn't said a word since we ordered. She ate mechanically, cutting her food into smaller and smaller pieces, bringing the fork to her mouth with the practiced movements of someone who'd learned to eat without tasting, without thinking, without being there at all. I wanted to reach across the table and shake her, to ask her, How do you do it? How do you sit there next to that man for 50 years and never say a word? How do you watch your son treat his wife like property and stay silent?" But I already knew the answer. You do it one day at a time. You do it by telling yourself it's not that bad. You do it by convincing yourself that keeping the peace is more important than keeping your soul. You do it by dying slowly from the inside out until there's nothing left but the shell. The conversation drifted to Marcus's work, some new building his firm was designing in Brooklyn. Gerald held forth on the importance of traditional family values in architecture, whatever that meant. Marcus nodded along, adding his own thoughts, eager for his father's approval. And Mia sat silent, her food growing cold on her plate. I tried to draw her into the conversation. "Mia, didn't you work on a project in Brooklyn last year before Ethan was born?" "That was a long time ago, Mom." "But you were so excited about it. That community center with the, I don't work anymore." She cut me off, not looking up from her plate. "I take care of Ethan now. Of course that's important too, but—" "The most important job in the world," Marcus interjected smoothly, "is being a mother. Mia knows that. We agreed she'd stay home until Ethan's in school. He needs her." The way he said "we agreed" made it clear there had been no agreement. There had been a decision, and Mia had simply accepted it. "I just meant—" I started, but Mia was looking at me with such desperate pleading in her eyes that I stopped. "It's fine, Mom. I'm happy staying home." She wasn't. I could see she wasn't. But what could I say with Marcus sitting right there with his parents at the table with my daughter so obviously afraid of causing a scene? So I smiled and nodded and felt like a coward. The meal dragged on. Gerald dominated the conversation with stories about his business successes, his golf games, his opinions on everything from politics to the proper way to raise children. Marcus hung on his every word. Patricia ate in silence, and Mia seemed to fold in on herself more and more with each passing minute. I kept glancing at her wrist where I'd seen the bruises. She kept her sleeves pulled down now, her hands in her lap under the table where no one could see. Finally, mercifully, the waiter came to clear our plates. "Can I interest anyone in dessert? We have a wonderful tiramisu tonight, or perhaps our chocolate torte." "Cheesecake for me," Gerald announced. "I'll have the same," Marcus said. "Nothing for me?" Patricia whispered. "Mom," Mia looked at me. "Just coffee, please." The waiter turned to Mia. "And for you, ma'am?" "I'll have the cheesecake too, please." The waiter nodded and disappeared. We sat in that awkward silence that falls over a table when the meal is over, but nobody's ready to leave yet. Gerald checked his phone. Marcus checked his. Patricia stared at the candle in the center of the table like she could see her future in the flame. I looked at my daughter and tried to memorize her face the way she looked right now in this moment, because something told me this was important. Something told me I needed to remember. The desserts arrived, and that's when everything fell apart. The waiter placed the plates on the table with his practiced smile. Chocolate torte for Patricia, even though she'd said she didn't want anything. Cheesecake for Gerald. Coffee for me. Cheesecake for Marcus. And pecan pie for Mia. "Excuse me," Mia said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I ordered cheesecake." "Oh," the waiter's face flushed. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. Let me correct that right away." "It doesn't matter," Mia said quickly. "Really, I can eat the pecan pie. It's fine." "Are you sure it's no trouble at all?" "I'm sure, thank you." But Marcus had already raised his hand, snapping his fingers to get the waiter's attention. "Excuse me, my wife ordered cheesecake. Is this how your restaurant operates? You just bring whatever you feel like?" His voice wasn't raised. That was the terrifying part. He spoke in that same controlled, reasonable tone he'd been using all evening. But there was an edge to it now, something sharp and dangerous underneath. The waiter went pale. "I sincerely apologize, sir. I must have mixed up the orders. I'll bring the cheesecake right away. No charge." "Marcus, it's really okay," Mia interrupted, her voice trembling slightly. "I like pecan pie. It's fine." "It's not fine." He turned to her, and I saw the shift in his expression, the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes went cold. "Why are you always such a conformist? Why can't you ever stand up for yourself?" "I am standing up for myself. I'm saying I don't mind." "You're embarrassing me." The words hung in the air like smoke. Nearby tables were starting to look over, sensing the drama unfolding. "Marcus, please." Mia's voice was barely a whisper now. "People are watching." "I don't care who's watching." "Marcus." And then it happened. So fast I almost couldn't process it. 1 second Mia was sitting there, her hands gripping the edge of the table. The next second Marcus's hand shot out and grabbed a fistful of her hair. He yanked her head back hard. So hard I heard something pop in her neck. The entire restaurant went silent. Not the polite quiet of fine dining, but the shocked, breathless silence of people witnessing something they couldn't quite believe. Mia didn't scream. She didn't fight back. She just let out a small, choked sob as tears began streaming down her face. Her hands came up not to pull his hand away, but to cover her face, to hide her shame. And in that terrible, frozen moment, I heard another sound. Clapping. Slow, deliberate clapping. Gerald Thornton was applauding his son like he'd just hit a home run. "That's how it's done," Gerald said loudly, clearly, so everyone in the restaurant could hear. "That's how it's done, son. She needs to know her place. These modern women need to be reminded who's in charge." He was smiling, actually smiling. Patricia stared at her untouched dessert, her face blank, her hands folded in her lap. She might as well have been alone in her living room for all the reaction she showed. And something inside me broke. Not broke, shattered, exploded, turned into something sharp and hot and absolutely done with being silent. I pushed back my chair and stood up. The sound of my chair scraping against the floor seemed to echo through the entire restaurant. Every eye turned to me. The conversations at other tables stopped mid-sentence. Even the waiters froze. Marcus let go of Mia's hair. She slumped forward in her chair, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs, tears dripping onto the white tablecloth. I looked at my daughter, my beautiful, brilliant daughter, who used to build birdhouses for wounded birds, and I thought about Edward, about what he'd told Mia all those years ago. Real love gives people what they need to fly. And I knew in that moment that I had failed her. I had watched her wings being clipped one feather at a time, and I had said nothing. I had smoothed things over, kept the peace, convinced myself it wasn't my place to interfere. But there are some silences that kill. And I was done being silent. I opened my mouth and I said the words that would change everything. "Mia, stand up." And my voice cut through the silence like a knife through butter. I barely recognized it. There was something in it I'd never heard before. Something hard and uncompromising and absolutely done with being polite. "Mom, no." Mia's voice was hoarse, broken. "Stand up, honey." Around us, I could feel the weight of 100 eyes. The other diners, the waiters, even the manager who'd appeared from somewhere in the back. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Marcus leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. That smile was back, the one that made him look like a snake. "Amelia, I think you're misunderstanding the situation." "Am I?" It was a moment of tension. Nothing more. Mia knows I sometimes get frustrated. She understands. "I understand," I said, and my voice was shaking now, but not with fear, with rage. Pure white-hot rage that I'd been swallowing down for 2 years. I understand that you just assaulted your wife in public. I understand that your father is applauding you for it. And I understand that my daughter is sitting there crying and you haven't even apologized. She provoked me. She ordered the wrong dessert. The words came out sharp as glass. She made a simple mistake and you grabbed her by the hair and hurt her. I didn't hurt her. I was just making a point. I took a step toward the table. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clench them into fists. Showing her who's in charge, teaching her a lesson. Gerald stood up, his face red. Now you listen here, Amelia. What happens between a husband and wife is none of your business. She's my daughter. She's my son's wife. And in this family we believe in traditional values. We believe that a man is the head of his household. You believe in abuse. I looked at Patricia still sitting there like a statue. Don't you? That's what you taught your son. That's what you've modeled for him his entire life. Patricia's hands tightened in her lap, but she said nothing. She just stared at her dessert like if she looked at it hard enough she could disappear into it. Marcus stood up now too, and something in his face made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. He was angry, but it was that controlled anger, the dangerous kind that doesn't shout, but whispers threats. Amelia, he said softly, you're causing a scene. You're embarrassing Mia, embarrassing yourself, embarrassing all of us. I think it's time for you to leave. I'm not leaving without my daughter. Your daughter is a grown woman. She makes her own choices. He turned to Mia, who was still sitting with her head bowed, tears streaming down her face. Honey, tell your mother you're fine. Tell her we're fine. Mia slowly raised her head. Her makeup was ruined mascara streaking down her cheeks. Her eyes were red and puffy. And in them I saw something that broke my heart into a million pieces. I saw a woman who had forgotten how to be brave. Mom, she whispered, please just go. You're making it worse. Honey, please, her voice cracked. Please just leave. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My daughter, my baby girl who used to be so fearless, was choosing him, was choosing to stay with a man who'd just humiliated her in front of a room full of strangers. But then I saw it. The slight movement of her hand pulling her sleeve down even further. The way her eyes darted to Marcus, then away. The tremor in her voice that wasn't just from crying. She wasn't choosing him. She was surviving him. There's a difference. All right, I said, even though every fiber of my being wanted to grab her and run. I'll go. But Mia? She looked up at me, and for just a second I saw a flash of the girl she used to be. The girl who built birdhouses and wasn't afraid of anything. My door is always open. Do you understand me? Always. Day or night, rain or shine, if you need me, I'm there. You just have to walk through it. Mom. Always Mia. Remember that. I picked up my purse, pulled out enough cash to cover my portion of the meal, and dropped it on the table. Then I walked out of Marcello's with my head high and my heart in pieces. The rain had picked up while we were inside. I stood on the sidewalk, letting it soak through my dress, and I cried. Not the polite, quiet tears of a woman who's learned to keep her emotions in check. The ugly, gasping sobs of a mother who's just watched her daughter disappear into a nightmare and couldn't do a damn thing to stop it. My phone buzzed in my purse. A text from an unknown number. I opened it with shaking hands. It was a video. Security footage from inside the restaurant showing me standing at the table, showing the scene that had just unfolded. And below it, a message. These unannounced scenes upset Mia. For her mental health, please refrain from further outbursts. Marcus, he'd gotten my number from Mia's phone. He was already controlling the narrative, already making me the problem. I wanted to throw my phone into the street. I wanted to march back into that restaurant and drag my daughter out by force. Instead, I did what any reasonable person would do in my situation. I called a lawyer. Patricia Lewis's office was in a brownstone in the village, tucked between a bookstore and a coffee shop that smelled like burnt espresso and broken dreams. I'd found her number through a friend who volunteered at a women's shelter. She specialized in domestic violence cases. It was Monday morning, 2 days after the restaurant incident. I hadn't heard from Mia. She hadn't answered my calls or responded to my texts. It was like she'd vanished into thin air. Patricia Lewis was in her 50s with iron gray hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun and eyes that had seen things they wished they could forget. Her handshake was firm, businesslike. Mrs. Morrison, thank you for coming in. Can I get you some coffee? Water? Water would be good. She poured from a pitcher on her desk and handed me a glass. I noticed her hands. They were scarred old burn marks on the backs of her fingers. I wondered what her story was, but I didn't ask. So, she said, settling into her chair. Tell me what's going on. I did. I told her everything, the bruises I'd seen on Mia's wrist, the incident at the restaurant, the way Mia had changed over the past 2 years. How the confident woman I'd raised had become a shadow. Patricia listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she sat back and looked at me with those tired, knowing eyes. Mrs. Morrison, I'm going to be honest with you. Everything you've described is classic domestic abuse. The isolation, the controlling behavior, the public humiliation, the physical violence. This man is dangerous. I know. But here's the hard truth. Without your daughter's cooperation, there's very little you can legally do. My heart sank. Nothing. I didn't say nothing, but your options are limited. You can't force an adult woman to leave her husband. You can't get a restraining order on her behalf. You can't even call the police unless you witness the abuse yourself, and even then if she refuses to press charges. She spread her hands. The system is set up to protect victims, but only if they're ready to be protected. So I'm supposed to just watch her get hurt, maybe killed. No. Patricia leaned forward. You're supposed to prepare. Document everything. Save those text messages. If you see bruises again, photograph them with Mia's permission. Talk to neighbors, friends, anyone who might have witnessed concerning behavior. Build a case so that when she's ready, and she will be ready someday, most of them are, you have everything she needs to get out safely. And if that day never comes? Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then you do what every mother does in your situation. You maintain the connection. You let her know she has options. You refuse to be pushed out of her life no matter how hard he tries to isolate her. Because the most dangerous time for a victim of domestic violence is when they try to leave. And when that moment comes, she needs to know she has somewhere to go. She pulled out a folder and pushed it across the desk. This is everything you'll need. Information about restraining orders, safe houses, legal aid services. Keep it somewhere safe. And Mrs. Morrison, yes, don't give up on her. Women in abusive relationships need to know someone believes them, someone's waiting for them. Sometimes that's the only thing that keeps them alive long enough to escape. I left Patricia's office with the folder tucked under my arm and a plan forming in my mind. If the law couldn't help me right now, I'd have to help myself. First, stop the brownstone in Park Slope, where Mia and Marcus lived. I knew Marcus worked late on Thursdays. Mia had mentioned it months ago. It was my best chance to see her alone. The house was beautiful from the outside, one of those renovated brownstones that probably cost $2 million. Perfectly manicured lawn flower boxes in the windows, a brass knocker on the front door shaped like a lion. It looked like a home. It looked safe. I knew better. I rang the doorbell and waited. I could hear movement inside, footsteps, but no one came to the door. I rang again. Mia, honey, it's Mom. I know you're in there. Please open the door. More footsteps, closer this time. Then Mia's voice muffled through the door. Mom, you can't be here. I just want to talk to you. 5 minutes, please. Marcus will be angry if he finds out. He's at work, isn't he? Just let me in. Please, baby. I need to see you. A long pause. Then the sound of locks turning 1, 2, 3. The door opened a crack, and Mia's face appeared in the gap. She looked terrible. No makeup, hair, unwashed dark circles under her eyes that made her look 10 years older. 5 minutes, she said. That's all? Thank you. She let me in, and I immediately understood why she'd been reluctant. The house was immaculate, not just clean sterile, like a museum where no one actually lived. The furniture was all expensive and uncomfortable looking. The walls were bare except for a few black and white photographs that looked like they'd come with the frames. And in every corner, mounted discreetly on the walls, were small black cameras. Mia, I said slowly, are those the security cameras? She wrapped her arms around herself. Marcus says it's for protection, in case someone breaks in. But I knew better. These weren't pointing at the doors and windows. They were pointing at the rooms themselves, at the furniture, at the places where people would sit and talk and live. They were for watching Mia. How many are there? I don't know. A lot. She walked into the living room and I followed. Mom, you really shouldn't be here. If Marcus sees the footage, then we won't give him anything to see. I sat down on the edge of the couch, right in the camera's blind spot. Sit with me. She did, perching on the edge like a bird ready to fly at the first sign of danger. Honey, I said gently, I need you to be honest with me. Did Marcus hurt you on Saturday? He was just frustrated. That's not what I asked. Did he hurt you? She was quiet for a long time, her hands twisting in her lap. Finally, in a voice so small I almost couldn't hear it. Yes. The word hung between us like a confession. How long has this been going on? Mom? How long, Mia? She closed her eyes. Since I got pregnant with Ethan. Maybe before. I don't know. It started small. Comments about what I was wearing, who I was talking to. Then he wanted me to quit my job. Said it would be better for the baby if I was home. And you agreed? I thought, her voice cracked. I thought it would make him happy. I thought if I just did what he wanted, he'd go back to being the person he was when we first met. That sweet, attentive guy who brought me flowers and made me laugh. But he didn't. No, it got worse. She pulled up her sleeve, showing me the bruises I'd seen at the restaurant. They looked even worse in the daylight. Sometimes he grabs me. When I say something wrong or the house isn't clean enough or dinner isn't perfect. He doesn't hit me, he's careful about that. But he grabs and he pushes, and sometimes she stopped, unable to finish. Sometimes what? Sometimes I think he might actually kill me. She said it so matter-of-factly, like she was commenting on the weather. Not on purpose, but maybe one day he'll push too hard or grab too tight and that'll be it. I felt sick. Then leave. Pack a bag, get Ethan, and come home with me right now. I can't. Yes, you can. Mom, you don't understand. Marcus controls everything. The bank accounts, the credit cards, even my phone. He checks the GPS. He monitors who I call. He has cameras everywhere. She gestured around us. I can't just leave. Then we'll call the police. And say what? That my husband grabbed my wrist, that he pulled my hair. They'll take a report, maybe. Marcus will tell them it was a misunderstanding. And then they'll leave and I'll be here alone with him, and he'll make sure I never get the chance to call them again. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. I'm trapped, Mom. Don't you see that I'm trapped? I pulled her into my arms and she collapsed against me like a puppet with cut strings. She felt so small, so fragile. My little girl who used to climb trees and wasn't afraid of anything. We'll find a way, I promised, even though I had no idea how. I won't let him hurt you anymore. You can't stop him. No one can. But she was wrong. There had to be a way. There had to be. We sat there for a long time, her crying in my arms, while the cameras watched us from the corners of the room. And I made a silent promise to my daughter, to Edward's memory, to that little girl who'd built a birdhouse for a wounded bird. I would find a way to free her, even if it meant burning this whole perfect life to the ground. I left Mia's house that Thursday afternoon with my heart in my throat and my mind racing. As I walked to my car, I could feel the cameras watching me through the windows. Marcus would see the footage. He would know I'd been there, and Mia would pay the price. My phone rang before I even reached the corner. Unknown number. I answered with shaking hands. Hello, Mrs. Morrison. Marcus's voice was smooth, controlled, terrifying in its calmness. I saw you visited my home today. Of course he had. Probably had alerts on his phone every time the cameras detected movement. I came to see my daughter. Without calling first, without permission. I don't need permission to see my own daughter. A pause. Then, actually you do. Mia is my wife. She lives in my house. And these unannounced visits upset her. They cause her stress, make her anxious. For her mental health, I'm going to have to ask you to stop. You're going to have to ask me. I couldn't finish the sentence. The audacity of it choked me. I'm trying to be reasonable here, Amelia. I understand you're concerned. But Mia and I are working through our issues. We're going to couples therapy. Did she tell you that? We're making progress. But we can't do that with you interfering, undermining our marriage, putting ideas in her head. Ideas? What ideas? That she should leave. That I'm some kind of monster. That she'd be better off without me. His voice hardened just a fraction. She wouldn't be, by the way. She has no job, no income. I support her and our son. Without me, she'd have nothing. The threat was clear. If she leaves, I'll destroy her financially. Love shouldn't come with threats, Marcus. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm stating facts. Now are we going to have a problem, Amelia, or can we be adults about this? Every instinct I had screamed at me to tell him to go to hell, but Patricia Lewis's words echoed in my mind. Maintain the connection. Don't give him an excuse to cut you off completely. So I swallowed my rage and said, I just want what's best for Mia. So do I, which is why I think it's best if you give us some space. If Mia wants to see you, she'll reach out. But no more surprise visits. Agreed. Fine. Good. I'm glad we understand each other. He hung up without saying goodbye. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Then I drove home and did what any desperate mother would do. I started building a case. Over the next 3 weeks, I became a detective. I documented everything in a notebook I kept hidden in my bedroom dresser, every text message from Mia that seemed off every canceled plan every time she made an excuse not to see me. The messages were always the same. Sorry, Mom can't make lunch. Ethan's sick. Sorry, Mom, Marcus and I have plans. Sorry, Mom, not a good time. Sorry. Always sorry. Like her very existence was an inconvenience. I called her every day. Sometimes she answered, but our conversations were brief, stilted. I could hear the tension in her voice, the way she chose her words carefully, like someone who knew they were being monitored. Because they were. I was sure of it now. I drove past her house twice a week, always at different times, taking different routes. I wasn't stalking. I was watching. There's a difference. I needed to know she was still alive, still there, still surviving. Sometimes I saw her through the window, moving through that sterile house like a ghost. Once I saw her in the backyard with Ethan pushing him on a swing set. Even from a distance, I could see how thin she'd gotten, how her shoulders hunched forward like she was trying to disappear. And Marcus was always there, coming home from work at exactly 6:15 every evening, leaving at exactly 7:30 every morning, taking out the trash on Tuesdays, mowing the lawn on Saturdays. Everything on a schedule, everything controlled. I took photos with my phone, nothing invasive, just the house. The cars in the driveway, timestamps proving I was paying attention. Building my case, one piece of evidence at a time. But I needed more. I needed something concrete, something that would hold up in court if it ever came to that. That's when I remembered Sophie. Sophie Chen had been Ethan's babysitter for the first 2 years of his life. Mia had mentioned her often in our phone calls back when things seemed normal. Sophie's so good with him, Mom. He loves her. But about 6 months ago, the mentions had stopped. When I asked about it, Mia had been vague. We don't need a sitter anymore. I'm home all the time. But children always need babysitters sometimes. Date nights, doctor's appointments, emergencies. The fact that Mia suddenly didn't use Sophie anymore seemed suspicious. I found Sophie's number in my old text messages. Mia had sent it to me once in case of emergency. I called from my car parked outside a coffee shop in Queens, my heart pounding. The phone rang 3 times. Then, hello. Hi, is this Sophie Chen? Yes, who's this? My name is Amelia Morrison. I'm Mia Sterling's mother. We met once at Ethan's 2nd birthday party. A pause. I remember. Is everything okay? Is Mia? That's what I'm trying to find out. I was hoping we could talk. In person, if possible. Talk about what? About why Marcus fired you. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, how did you know he fired me? Call it a mother's intuition. Please, Sophie, I think my daughter is in trouble, and I think you might know something that could help her. Another long pause. Okay, but not on the phone, and not anywhere near Park Slope. You name the place. We agreed to meet the next day at a diner in Astoria, far enough from Mia's neighborhood that no one would accidentally see us. The Starlight Diner was one of those classic New York institutions. Red vinyl booths, a counter with spinning stools, and a menu that hadn't changed since 1985. I arrived 20 minutes early and ordered coffee I didn't drink, just watching the door. Sophie walked in at exactly 2 o'clock. She was younger than I remembered, maybe 24 or 25, with long dark hair pulled back in a braid, and the kind of nervous energy that made her look over her shoulder every few seconds. Mrs. Morrison. She slid into the booth across from me. Thank you for coming. Can I get you something coffee, lunch? Just water. She folded her hands on the table. Look, I don't want any trouble. I signed an NDA. An NDA for a babysitting job. Marcus had his lawyer draw it up when he fired me. Said if I talked about anything I saw or heard while working for them, he'd sue me for breach of contract. She looked genuinely scared. I can't afford a lawyer, Mrs. Morrison. I'm a student. I need this money for tuition. I'm not trying to get you in trouble, Sophie. I just need to understand what happened. My daughter won't talk to me and I'm afraid for her. Sophie bit her lip. How afraid? I think her husband is hurting her. He is. The words came out flat, certain. I saw it. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. You saw it? Not at first. At first everything seemed normal. Marcus was polite professional. Mia was quiet but nice. Ethan was a sweet kid. I thought it was a good job, easy money. What changed? She pulled out her phone, unlocked it with shaking hands, and scrolled through her photos. This changed. She turned the screen toward me, and my world tilted on its axis. It was a photograph slightly blurry, like it had been taken quickly from a doorway. But the image was clear enough. Marcus had Mia against the wall of their bedroom, one hand around her throat, the other raised and clenched in a fist. Mia's eyes were squeezed shut, her hands up in a defensive posture. And in the corner of the frame, barely visible, was Ethan sitting on his little bed in dinosaur pajamas watching. Just watching. Oh my God. The words came out as barely a whisper. I came early that day, Sophie said, her voice shaking. It was a Thursday about 8 months ago. I had a key like always. I let myself in and heard them arguing upstairs. Not loud arguing, Marcus never yells. But I could hear Mia crying, begging him to stop. What did you do? I went upstairs. I shouldn't have, but I was scared for her. The bedroom door was open and I saw... She gestured to the photo. I took the picture without thinking. Just pulled out my phone and clicked. And Marcus saw me. What happened then? He let go of Mia. Came downstairs like nothing was wrong. Told me it was a private domestic matter and none of my business. Said marriages have rough patches that I was too young to understand. Did you call the police? I tried. I told him I was going to report what I'd seen. That's when he laughed. Sophie's hands clenched into fists. He said no one would believe me, that it was my word against his, and he's a successful engineer with a spotless reputation, and I'm just some college kid who works for $10 an hour. He said Mia would deny everything and he'd make sure I never worked in this city again. But you have the photo. He said photos can be faked, that there's no timestamp, no way to prove when it was taken or what the context was. He said he could claim I staged it, that I was trying to blackmail them. And then Mia came downstairs. I closed my eyes. Let me guess. She told you everything was fine. She had red marks on her neck. I could see the fingerprints. And she looked me in the eye and said it was just a disagreement, that Marcus would never really hurt her, that I misunderstood what I saw. Sophie's voice cracked. She asked me to delete the photo, and when I said no, Marcus fired me on the spot. Had his lawyer send me an NDA the next day with a severance check for $2,000. Hush money. But you didn't delete it. No, I couldn't. Because of Ethan. She pulled up another photo on her phone, Ethan at his second birthday party, chocolate cake smeared on his face, laughing. That little boy is growing up watching his father abuse his mother. What do you think that's teaching him, that it's okay to hurt women, that love looks like fear? She was crying now, angry tears streaming down her face. I kept the photo because someday when Mia's ready to leave, if she ever is, she'll need proof. And I wanted her to have it. I reached across the table and took Sophie's hand. Can you send that photo to me? If I do, and Marcus finds out, he won't, I promise. But my daughter needs help, and right now this is the only concrete evidence I have that he's dangerous. Sophie was quiet for a long moment, torn between fear and conscience. Finally she nodded. Give me your number. I wrote it down on a napkin. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The photo loaded on my screen, and I had to fight not to throw up. My daughter, against a wall, hand around her throat, and my grandson watching it all. Thank you, I managed to say. You have no idea what this means. Just promise me you'll help her. Promise me this wasn't for nothing. I promise. I left the diner with the photo burned into my brain and a new determination settling in my bones. This was it. This was the evidence I needed. I drove straight to Patricia Lewis's office. She looked at the photo for a long time, her expression growing darker with each passing second. Finally, she set down her phone and looked at me. This is significant, Mrs. Morrison. Very significant. This shows clear physical abuse, and the fact that the child was present makes it even more serious. In New York, a child witnessing domestic violence is considered child abuse. So what do we do? Can we use this to get Mia out? We can use it to build a case, but she held up a hand before I could get too hopeful. There are problems. First, this photo was taken 8 months ago. Marcus will argue that it's old, that they've worked through their issues since then. Second, Sophie is terrified of being sued. Would she be willing to testify? I don't know. Maybe if it meant helping Mia. And third, most importantly, does Mia want to leave? Because if we show her this photo and she still chooses to stay, we're back to square one. Except now Marcus knows we have evidence and he'll be even more careful. I slumped in my chair. So we wait. We wait for Mia to be ready. But in the meantime, we prepare. I'm going to draft a restraining order, file it, but not serve it. That way, the moment she's ready, we can move immediately. I'll also prepare emergency custody papers for Ethan. And I want you to keep documenting everything, every canceled plan, every suspicious call, every sign that things are escalating. How will I know when things are escalating? Patricia's expression was grim. You'll know. Abuse always escalates. It's just a matter of time. She was right. 6 weeks after my meeting with Sophie, Mia called me. It was 11:30 on a Wednesday night, and I was already in bed reading a mystery novel I couldn't concentrate on. The phone rang and Mia's name appeared on the screen. I answered before the second ring. Honey. Mom. Her voice was strange, distant, like she was calling from very far away. I need to tell you something. What is it? Are you okay? I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air between us. I sat up in bed, my heart racing. Pregnant. How far along? 10 weeks. I just found out for sure yesterday. Does Marcus know? A pause. I told him this morning. Something in her voice made my skin prickle with dread. How did he react? He's not happy. She said it so quietly I almost couldn't hear. He says we can't afford another child, that Ethan is enough. He wants me to... Her voice broke. He wants me to get rid of it. Mia. But I can't, Mom. I can't do that. This is my baby. She was crying now, those silent tears I'd heard so many times. I told him I wanted to keep it, and he got so angry. He said I was being selfish, that I wasn't thinking about the family, about what's best for Ethan. What's best for Ethan is having a mother who's alive and healthy. Honey, where are you right now? In the bathroom. It's the only place there's no camera. The bathroom. She had to hide in the bathroom to call her own mother. Mia, listen to me. I need you to be honest. Has Marcus hurt you because of this? Because of the pregnancy. Silence. Mia. He grabbed me. This morning when I said I was keeping the baby, he grabbed my arms and shook me and said I was ruining everything. And tonight, her voice dropped to almost a whisper. Tonight at dinner I made pot roast, his favorite, and he said it was overcooked, that I can't do anything right, and he threw the plate against the wall. Jesus Christ. Ethan was sitting right there, Mom. He saw the plate shatter, and he started crying, and Marcus yelled at him to shut up. And I took Ethan upstairs and locked us in his room, and Marcus pounded on the door for 20 minutes, telling me I was being dramatic, that I was turning his son against him. She was sobbing now, great gasping sobs that made it hard for her to breathe. Where is he now? Asleep. He went to bed an hour ago like nothing happened. And I've been sitting here in the bathroom trying to figure out what to do. This was it. The moment Patricia had told me to wait for. The moment when Mia was finally ready. Come home, I said, right now. Pack a bag for you and Ethan and come to my house. I can't. Yes, you can. I'll come get you if you need me to. Or call a cab. Call an Uber. Hell walk if you have to. But get out of that house tonight. But what about... We'll figure it out. All of it. The divorce, custody, money, everything. But first you need to be safe. You and Ethan and that baby you're carrying. Please, Mia. Please trust me. I heard her breathing on the other end of the line, quick and shallow. And then, okay. One word. But it was everything. Okay, Mom. I'm coming home. I stayed on the phone with Mia while she quietly packed a bag. I heard the rustle of clothes, the soft click of drawers opening and closing, the muffled sound of her moving through the house like a thief stealing from her own life. Just essentials, I told her, keeping my voice calm even though my heart was hammering. Clothes for a few days, Ethan's favorite stuffed animal, your documents, birth certificates, social security cards, anything important. Marcus keeps all the papers in his office. It's locked. Then leave them. We'll get copies. Just get yourself and Ethan out. I heard her moving into Ethan's room, the creak of his door. Ethan, baby, wake up. We're going to Grandma's house. A sleepy child's voice. Now it's dark. I know, sweetheart. But Grandma really wants to see you. It's a special sleepover. Can you be very quiet? We don't want to wake Daddy. Is Daddy coming? Not tonight, just us. I heard the fear in Ethan's voice the way even a 3-year-old had learned to be afraid. Is Daddy mad? No, baby. Everything's fine. Let's just go very quietly, okay? The sound of small feet padding across carpet. A zipper closing. Mia's breathing quick and scared. Mom, I'm in the hallway. The stairs are right by the bedroom. If he wakes up, he won't. You're going to walk down very quietly, and you're going to walk out that door, and you're going to get in a cab and come here. Can you do that? Yes. One step, then another. I listened to her breathing, counting her footsteps in my mind. Down the stairs across the foyer to the front door. The sound of locks turning 1, 2, 3. How had I never noticed before how many locks there were? How trapped she'd been. Then the blessed sound of a door opening and Mia's voice shaky but determined. We're out. We're outside. Good girl. Now walk to the corner and call a cab. I'll stay on the line. I heard the sound of the city at night, distant sirens, the rumble of a subway, someone's music playing too loud. And underneath it all, Mia's footsteps and Ethan's small voice asking questions his mother couldn't answer yet. There's a cab, Mia said. We're getting in. Driver, can you take us to Mom? What's your address? I gave it to her, heard her repeat it to the driver. Then the sound of a car door closing, the engine starting, and Mia's shaky exhale. We're moving. We're actually moving. Oh, God. Mom, what if he wakes up? What if he looks at the cameras and sees we're gone? Then he sees you're gone. You have every right to leave Mia. You're not a prisoner. But we both knew that's exactly what she'd been. The cab ride took 20 minutes. I stayed on the phone the whole time talking to Mia about nothing, the weather, what she wanted for breakfast, whether Ethan still liked dinosaurs as much as he used to. Anything to keep her calm, to keep her from changing her mind. Finally, we're here. I see your building. I was already at the door, having thrown on clothes over my pajamas. I buzzed them up and stood in the hallway waiting. And when the elevator doors opened and I saw my daughter thin and scared and carrying a sleeping 3-year-old, I started crying. Come here, I said, pulling them both into my arms. You're safe now. You're both safe. Mia collapsed against me, and we stood there in the hallway while she sobbed into my shoulder and Ethan slept on dead to the world the way only children can be. I did it, she whispered. I actually did it. Yes, you did. I'm so proud of you. We went inside and I settled Ethan in my bed, tucking him in with my warmest blanket. Mia stood in the doorway watching him, and I saw something in her face I hadn't seen in years. Hope. Mom, she turned to me. What happens now? Now we make sure you never have to go back. The next morning started with my phone ringing at 6 a.m. Marcus's name on the screen. I'd been expecting this. I answered with my hand steady and my voice firm. Marcus, where are they? No preamble, no pretense of civility, just cold, controlled rage. Somewhere safe. They're my wife and son, Amelia. I want them back. Now. No. A pause. Excuse me. I said no. Mia doesn't want to come back and I'm not going to make her. You can't keep them from me. That's kidnapping. I'll call the police. Call them. Tell them your wife left because you hurt her. Tell them about the cameras in every room. Tell them about the bruises, the threats, the way you control every aspect of her life. See how that goes. I could hear him breathing on the other end, recalculating his approach. I want to talk to Mia. She doesn't want to talk to you. Put her on the phone, now. No. His voice dropped to that dangerous whisper I'd heard at the restaurant. You're making a very big mistake, Amelia. I have lawyers. I have money. I have rights as a husband and father. If you don't send them home right now, I will make your life a living hell. You already tried that. Didn't work. I hung up. My hands were shaking, adrenaline flooding my system, but I felt good. For the first time in years, I'd stood up to him without backing down. The phone rang again immediately. I declined the call. It rang again and again. After the 5th call, I blocked his number. Mia emerged from the guest room where I'd moved her after settling Ethan. She looked terrible. She'd barely slept, I could tell, but there was something different in her eyes. Something like determination. Was that Marcus? Yes. What did he say? The usual threats. Lawyers, police custody battles. Nothing we can't handle. She sat down at the kitchen table, wrapping her hands around the coffee mug I offered her. He's not going to let this go, Mom. He's going to fight. So will we. I've already called Patricia Lewis. She's the lawyer I told you about. She's coming by this afternoon with restraining order papers. We're going to make sure Marcus can't come near you. He'll say I'm overreacting, that I took Ethan in the middle of the night for no reason, that I'm an unstable mother. Let him say it. We have evidence. Photos, witnesses, documentation of his abuse. I pulled out my phone and showed her Sophie's photograph. And we have this. Mia's face went white. Where did you get that? Sophie gave it to me. She's willing to testify if it comes to that. She stared at the image for a long time herself against the wall, Marcus's hand at her throat, Ethan watching from the corner. I forgot about this, she whispered. Or maybe I convinced myself it wasn't as bad as I remembered. But seeing it now, it's as bad as you remembered. Worse, maybe. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. How did I let it get this bad? How did I become this person? Honey, this isn't your fault. None of it. Abusers don't start out showing their true colors. They seduce you first, make you fall in love, make you dependent. And then little by little they take everything away until you don't even remember who you were before them. I used to build things, Mom. Remember, I was going to design buildings that made people feel safe, and instead I ended up living in a prison. But you got out. That's what matters. You found your courage and you got out. Did I? Or did I just run away in the middle of the night like a coward? I took her hand. Running from danger isn't cowardice, Mia. It's survival. And survival is the bravest thing you can do. Patricia Lewis arrived at 2 o'clock with a briefcase full of legal documents and the no-nonsense attitude of a woman who'd seen this 1,000 times and still got angry every time. She sat at my kitchen table across from Mia and laid out the situation in clear, direct terms. First thing, we file for an emergency restraining order. Given the photographic evidence and witness testimony, a judge will likely grant it immediately. This prohibits Marcus from coming within 500 feet of you or Ethan. What if he violates it? Mia asked. Then he gets arrested. And that violation strengthens our case for the divorce and custody proceedings. Patricia pulled out more papers. Second, we file for divorce on grounds of cruel and inhumane treatment. New York is a no-fault divorce state, but documenting the abuse helps with custody and asset division. We have a prenup, Mia said quietly. Marcus insisted on it before we got married. It says if we divorce, I get nothing. The house is in his name, the cars, the bank accounts, everything. Prenups can be challenged, especially if they were signed under duress or if circumstances have changed significantly. And regardless, the court's primary concern will be the welfare of Ethan. Marcus will have to pay child support at minimum. He'll fight for custody. He'll say I'm unfit, that I abandoned my home in the middle of the night. And we'll show the judge why you left. We have documentation of abuse. We have proof that Ethan witnessed violence. We have medical records. She looked at Mia. You do have medical records, right? Times you went to the doctor or ER for injuries. Mia shook her head. He never hurt me badly enough to need a doctor. He was always careful about that. Nothing broken, nothing that couldn't be hidden with makeup. That's fine. We work with what we have, and what we have is substantial. Patricia started laying out forms. Now I need you to go through everything that happened chronologically. Every incident of abuse, every threat, every time he controlled your movements or finances or communication. Can you do that? Mia looked at the blank pages in front of her and nodded. Yes. Good. It won't be easy. You'll have to relive everything. But it's necessary. I understand. Patricia stood up to leave, then paused. Mia, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've represented hundreds of women in situations like yours, and I want you to know you did the right thing. Getting out is the hardest part. Everything after this is just paperwork. After she left, Mia sat at the table with the blank forms for a long time. Finally, she picked up a pen. Mom, will you sit with me while I write this? Of course, honey. And I did. I sat beside my daughter while she documented 2 years of hell in careful, painful detail. Every time he grabbed her. Every time he threw something. Every time he told her she was worthless, stupid, lucky he put up with her. It took 4 hours. When she was done, her hand was cramping and her face was streaked with tears, but there was also something like relief in her expression. It's real now, she said. Written down like this, I can't pretend anymore. I can't tell myself it wasn't that bad. It was that bad. And now people will believe you. But even as I said it, I wondered, would a judge look at successful, charming Marcus Thornton and see a monster? Or would they see a concerned father fighting to get his family back? I didn't know. But I knew we had to try. That night after Ethan was asleep and Mia had finally dozed off on my couch, exhausted from writing her statement, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it and my blood ran cold. It was a photograph of my building, taken from across the street. And below it a message, "I know where you live, Amelia. I know where they are. This isn't over." No signature. But I knew who it was from. Marcus Thornton was watching, and he wasn't going to let them go without a fight. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my living room chair with the lights off, watching the street below through a gap in the curtains. Every car that passed made my heart jump. Every shadow looked like Marcus. The photo he'd sent glowed on my phone screen. My building, my windows, my home that was supposed to be safe. The message was clear: I can get to you anytime I want. At 3 a.m, I finally admitted defeat and made coffee. Strong and black, the way Edward used to drink it. I wrapped my hands around the mug and tried to think clearly. Marcus was escalating. That's what Patricia had warned me about. Abusers always escalate when they lose control. And right now, Marcus had lost control of his wife, his son, and his carefully constructed perfect life. That made him dangerous. My phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number: "Mia needs to come home. This is her last chance to do this the easy way." I blocked the number. 30 seconds later, another text from a different number. "You can't hide them forever." I blocked that one too. Then I turned off my phone and sat in the dark, listening to my daughter and grandson sleep in the other room, and I made a decision. If Marcus wanted a war, he was going to get one. But this time he wouldn't be fighting a terrified woman with no resources. He'd be fighting a mother with nothing left to lose. Morning came gray and cold, the kind of November day that makes you wonder if summer was just a dream. I was on my 3rd cup of coffee when Mia emerged from the guest room looking as exhausted as I felt. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "Some, you not much." She poured herself coffee and sat across from me. I keep waiting for him to break down the door. I debated whether to show her the texts, then decided she deserved to know. She looked at the photos on my phone and her face went pale. "He's watching us." "Yes." "Mom, maybe I should go back. Just for now. Just until we have the restraining order." "No." The word came out harder than I intended. "Mia, listen to me. Going back now would be the most dangerous thing you could do. You've challenged him. You've taken away his control. If you go back, he'll make sure you never leave again. But he's threatening you. Let him threaten. I'm not afraid of Marcus Thornton. A lie, but a necessary one. Patricia's filing for the restraining order this morning. Once that's in place, if he comes near us, he goes to jail." And if he doesn't care about jail? That was the question, wasn't it? How far would Marcus go before I could answer? There was a knock at the door. 3 sharp raps that made us both jump. "Don't answer it," Mia whispered. I looked through the peephole. A uniformed police officer stood in the hallway looking bored. My stomach dropped. Had Marcus called them? Claimed we kidnapped Ethan? I opened the door with the chain still on. "Can I help you?" "Mrs. Morrison, I'm Officer Rodriguez. We got a call about a welfare check." "A welfare check?" "Yes, ma'am. A Marcus Thornton called, said his wife and son are here, that he's concerned for their safety. He asked us to make sure they're okay." So that was his play. If he couldn't threaten us into submission, he'd use the police to find us. "My daughter and grandson are here voluntarily, officer. They're fine." "I understand, ma'am, but I still need to see them, just to confirm they're safe." Mia appeared behind me, Ethan on her hip. The boy's face was buried in her shoulder, shy around strangers. "I'm Mia Thornton," she said, her voice stronger than I expected. "This is my son, Ethan. We're staying with my mother." Officer Rodriguez pulled out a notepad. "And you're here of your own free will?" "Yes." "Your husband seems to think you might be in danger." "The only danger I'm in is from my husband." Mia shifted Ethan to her other hip. "I left him because he was abusing me. I'm filing for a restraining order today." The officer's expression changed, became more sympathetic. "I see. Do you have documentation of the abuse? Photographs, witness testimony, and a written statement? My lawyer has everything." "Have you filed a police report?" "Not yet, but I will if necessary." Officer Rodriguez made some notes. "Ma'am, if you're in immediate danger, we can help you. We can connect you with resources." "I appreciate that, but I have a lawyer and I'm safe here. I just need my husband to leave us alone." "Understood." He handed her a card. "If he shows up here, if he tries to contact you, call 911 immediately and get that restraining order filed as soon as possible." After he left, Mia sagged against the wall. "He's using the police to harass us. One welfare check isn't harassment, but now there's a police record of you stating you left due to abuse. That helps our case." My phone rang. Patricia Lewis. "Amelia, we have a problem. Marcus filed an emergency custody petition this morning. He's claiming Mia is mentally unstable and that she abducted Ethan." My hand tightened on the phone. "Can he do that?" "He can file anything he wants. Whether a judge grants it is another matter. But we have a hearing tomorrow morning at 9. Mia needs to be there." "Tomorrow that fast?" Emergency custody hearings move quickly. The good news is I also filed our restraining order petition. The judge will hear both cases together. Be at the courthouse at 8:30, and Amelia, make sure Mia is prepared. Marcus will be there with his lawyers, and they're going to try to paint her as an unfit mother. We spent the rest of the day preparing. Patricia came over with a paralegal, and they went through Mia's statement line by line, preparing her for the questions she'd face. "They're going to ask why you didn't leave sooner," Patricia said. "They're going to ask why you didn't call the police. They're going to try to make it seem like you're exaggerating or lying. So what do I say? You tell the truth. You were afraid. You were isolated. You were financially dependent. And most importantly, you were protecting your child. The moment you found out you were pregnant again, you knew you had to get out before he hurt this baby too." Will they ask about the pregnancy? Probably. And that's good for us. It shows you had a compelling reason to leave when you did. We rehearsed questions until my head spun. What happened on this date? Why didn't you document this incident? Why didn't your mother notice sooner? Each question designed to poke holes in Mia's story to make her seem unreliable. By the time Patricia left at 6, Mia looked shell-shocked. "I can't do this, Mom. I can't stand up in front of a judge and relive all of this." "Yes, you can." "What if they don't believe me? What if they give Ethan to Marcus?" I took her hands. "They will believe you, because you're telling the truth, and the truth has a way of coming out. And even if they don't believe you at first, we'll keep fighting. We'll appeal. We'll do whatever it takes." "Why are you doing this?" "You could have just stayed out of it. Let me deal with my own mess. Because you're my daughter. Because I love you. And because I failed you once by not seeing what was happening, and I'll be damned if I fail you again." She hugged me then tight and desperate, and I felt her tears soaking through my shirt. "Thank you, Mom, for everything." "Always, baby. Always." That night I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I went to Edward's closet and pulled out his favorite sweater, the brown cardigan he wore every Sunday morning while reading the paper. It still smelled faintly of his cologne and coffee. I put it on and sat in the dark living room talking to him like he was still here. "I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, Edward. I'm so scared I'm making it worse. What if Marcus wins? What if he takes Ethan? What if Mia never forgives me for pushing her to leave?" The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. "She built a birdhouse once, remember? Said everyone deserves a safe place. And now she's the bird with the broken wing, and I'm trying to give her that safe place, but I don't know if it's enough." I closed my eyes and let myself imagine his response. Edward always knew what to say. "You're doing exactly what you should be doing. You're fighting for our daughter. That's what parents do." "I'm terrified." "So is she. But she has you, and that makes all the difference." "What if it's not enough?" "Then you keep fighting until it is." I sat there for a long time wrapped in his sweater, drawing strength from the memory of a man who'd always believed I was stronger than I thought I was. I hoped he was right. The family court building was gray and imposing all concrete and security checkpoints. We arrived at 8:15 early enough to watch Marcus arrive with his lawyers. There were 3 of them. 3 lawyers in expensive suits carrying leather briefcases looking like they'd stepped out of a corporate boardroom. Marcus walked between them perfectly groomed in a navy suit, looking every inch the successful concerned father. He saw us across the lobby and his face hardened. But he didn't approach, didn't speak. Just stared at Mia with an expression that made my blood run cold. It wasn't anger. It was ownership. The look of someone seeing their property and planning how to retrieve it. "Don't look at him," Patricia murmured to Mia. "Eyes forward. You don't owe him anything, not even acknowledgement." We went through security and up to the third floor where a dozen other families waited for their own hearings. Crying children stressed parents' lawyers whispering in corners. The everyday tragedy of families falling apart. At exactly 9 o'clock, a bailiff called Thornton versus Thornton Judge Kathleen Morrison presiding. We filed into the courtroom. It was smaller than I expected, more like a conference room with a judge's bench. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, the smell of old paper, and desperation. Judge Morrison was a black woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense expression. She looked at both parties as we took our seats, Mia, Patricia, and me on one side, Marcus and his 3 lawyers on the other. "We're here for emergency custody and restraining order petitions," she said. "Mr. Thornton, you filed first. Your attorney may proceed." Marcus's lead lawyer stood up. His name was Richard Castellano, according to the nameplate on the table. Silver-haired, expensive watch, the kind of lawyer who charged $1,000 an hour. "Your Honor, my client is here today because he's desperately concerned for his son. 4 days ago, his wife took their 3-year-old child in the middle of the night, without warning, without discussion, and without his consent. She has refused to communicate about where they are or when they're coming home. We believe she may be experiencing a mental health crisis, and we're asking the court to grant emergency custody to Mr. Thornton until Mrs. Thornton can be properly evaluated." "Mental health crisis?" Patricia was on her feet. "Your Honor, that's absurd. Mrs. Thornton left because she was being abused by her husband. We have photographic evidence, witness testimony." "Alleged abuse," Castellano interrupted smoothly, "which my client categorically denies. What we have is a pattern of unstable behavior. Mrs. Thornton quit her job 2 years ago without discussion. She's become increasingly isolated from friends and family, and now she's making wild accusations in what appears to be an attempt to alienate a devoted father from his child." Judge Morrison held up a hand. "I'll hear arguments from both sides, but first I want to hear from Mrs. Thornton directly. Mrs. Thornton, please approach." Mia stood on shaking legs and walked to the witness stand. The court reporter positioned her fingers over the stenography machine. "Please state your full name for the record." "Mia Catherine Thornton." "Mrs. Thornton, why did you leave your marital home?" Mia took a deep breath. Her voice was quiet but steady. "Because my husband was abusing me, physically, emotionally, and financially. And I was afraid if I stayed, he would eventually kill me." Marcus made a scoff of disbelief. Judge Morrison's eyes flicked to him. "Mr. Thornton, you'll have your chance to speak. Mrs. Thornton, please continue." And Mia did. She told the judge everything. About the bruises, the controlling behavior, the cameras in every room, the way Marcus monitored her phone, her movements, her money. The escalating violence that had started during her first pregnancy and gotten worse ever since. "And then I found out I was pregnant again," she said, her voice breaking. "I told Marcus and he was furious. He said we couldn't afford another child, that I was being selfish. He grabbed me hard enough to leave bruises and told me I needed to take care of it. And I realized if I stayed, he would hurt this baby. Or me. Or both." "Do you have evidence of this abuse?" Patricia stood. "Your Honor, we have multiple pieces of evidence. First, photographs taken by the child's former babysitter showing Mr. Thornton choking Mrs. Thornton while their son watched. Second, medical records showing Mrs. Thornton sought treatment for injuries consistent with assault. And third, a detailed written statement documenting years of abuse." She handed a folder to the judge, who opened it and began reviewing the contents. Her expression grew darker as she looked at each page. Marcus's lawyer jumped in. "Your Honor, that photograph is nearly a year old, taken by a disgruntled employee who was fired for theft. As for medical records, Mrs. Thornton has been seen by a doctor exactly once in the past 2 years for a sprained ankle, which she told the doctor she sustained falling downstairs. There's no evidence of ongoing abuse." "Because he was careful," Mia said louder now. "He never hit me where it would show, never hurt me badly enough that I'd need a hospital. He was always in control. That's what made it so terrifying." Judge Morrison looked at the photograph for a long time. "Mr. Thornton, I'm looking at a picture of you with your hand around your wife's throat. Can you explain this?" Marcus stood all wounded dignity. "Your Honor, my wife and I had an argument that day. It got heated. I'm not proud of it, but it was a single incident that occurred during an extremely stressful time. I was working 80-hour weeks, we just had a baby, my wife was showing signs of postpartum depression. I lost my temper. It was wrong, and I immediately sought therapy to ensure it never happened again. You went to therapy. Yes, Your Honor, both individual and couples counseling. I have documentation if you'd like to see it. One of his lawyers handed up another folder. Judge Morrison reviewed it, frowning. These records show you attended 4 sessions of anger management 8 months ago. Nothing since then. Because I didn't need it anymore. The techniques I learned were effective. I haven't had an incident since. He's lying, Mia said. He threw a plate at the wall 3 days before I left. He's grabbed me at least a dozen times. He punched a hole in our bedroom wall last month because I forgot to pick up his dry cleaning. Did you photograph the wall? No, he patched it the same day. Did you call the police? No. Why not? Mia's hands twisted in her lap. Because I was afraid. Because he controls our money, our house, everything. Because he told me if I ever left, he'd make sure I never saw Ethan again. And I believed him. Judge Morrison sat back. Mrs. Thornton, you're an educated woman, an architect by training. Why didn't you reach out for help sooner, to your mother, to friends, to a women's shelter? This was the question they'd rehearsed, the question that made victims look complicit in their own abuse. Because by the time I realized how bad things had gotten, I didn't know how to get out. He'd isolated me from my friends. My mother lived across town, and I only saw her when Marcus allowed it. And I kept thinking it would get better. That if I just tried harder, did better, was better, he'd go back to being the man I married. But he didn't. No, Your Honor. He got worse. And when I found out about this pregnancy, I knew I had to protect this baby. I couldn't bring another child into that house. Judge Morrison turned to Marcus. Mr. Thornton, your wife claims you insisted she terminate the pregnancy. Is that true? Marcus's lawyer started to object, but Marcus waved him off. Your Honor, when Mia told me she was pregnant, I expressed concerns about our financial situation and whether it was the right time. I may have suggested she consider her options, but I never demanded she terminate. That was her interpretation. I said I wanted to keep the baby and you grabbed me by the arms and shook me, Mia shot back. You said I was ruining everything, that I was being selfish. That wasn't a suggestion, Marcus. That was a threat. Your Honor, my client's recollection of that conversation is very different. I'm sure it is. Judge Morrison closed the folder. Here's what I'm seeing. We have evidence of at least one incident of physical violence. We have witness testimony from a babysitter. We have a pattern of controlling behavior. And we have a pregnant woman who was frightened enough to leave in the middle of the night. She looked at Marcus. Mr. Thornton, I'm going to grant a temporary restraining order. You are not to contact Mrs. Thornton except through attorneys. You are not to come within 500 feet of her mother's residence, or Ethan's preschool. Violations will result in arrest. Marcus's face went red. Your Honor, that's my son. You'll have supervised visitation, 2 hours twice a week at a court-approved facility. Mrs. Thornton retains primary custody pending a full hearing in 30 days. This is outrageous. This is temporary, Mr. Thornton. You'll have the opportunity to present your case at the full hearing. But based on the evidence before me today, I'm not comfortable allowing unsupervised contact. This hearing is adjourned. She banged her gavel, and it was over. We walked out of the courthouse in a daze. Mia was crying, but this time from relief. I can't believe she believed me, she kept saying. I can't believe it worked. Of course she believed you. You told the truth. Patricia was already on her phone making notes. This is good, very good. The restraining order gives us leverage for the divorce proceedings, and the supervised visitation shows the judge takes the abuse allegations seriously. But it's only temporary, I said. What happens in 30 days? We build an even stronger case. We get Sophie to testify. We document every attempt Marcus makes to violate the order. We show the judge a pattern of behavior that makes him unsafe to be around Ethan unsupervised. As we walked to my car, I felt someone watching us. I looked back and saw Marcus standing on the courthouse steps, flanked by his lawyers. He was staring at Mia with an expression that made my skin crawl. Not anger, not even hate. Calculation. He was already planning his next move. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus waged a war of attrition. It started with social media. Suddenly his Facebook page was full of posts about fatherhood. Photos of him and Ethan at the park, at the zoo, at birthday parties. Old photos from before Mia left, but posted now with captions about how much he missed his son. Being separated from your child is the worst pain imaginable. Praying for reunification with my boy. Remember, there are always two sides to every story. Don't believe everything you hear. A father's love never dies no matter what obstacles are placed in his way. He never mentioned Mia by name. He didn't have to. His friends and family filled in the blanks in the comments. You're such a good father. Hang in there. Some women use children as weapons. Stay strong. Praying for you and Ethan. The truth always comes out. Then came the emails. Not to Mia directly, that would violate the restraining order, but to her old friends, her former colleagues, even distant relatives. Hi, I know we haven't spoken in a while, but I wanted to reach out regarding Mia. I'm very concerned about her mental health. She's made some troubling accusations and taken Ethan away from his home. If you care about her, please encourage her to seek help and come home where she belongs. Some of her friends forwarded the emails to Mia. Others didn't respond at all. And a few, the ones who'd always thought Marcus was charming, who'd never seen the private side of him, started reaching out to Mia with concern. Are you okay? Marcus seems really worried about you. Maybe you guys should try counseling. For Ethan's sake, I'm not taking sides, but leaving in the middle of the night seems pretty extreme. Each message was a little cut, a small erosion of Mia's support system, and Marcus knew exactly what he was doing. He's poisoning people against me, Mia said one night, scrolling through her phone with tears in her eyes. My own cousin just texted asking if I'm having a breakdown. Block them all, I said. Anyone who doesn't believe you doesn't deserve access to you. But what if he's right? What if I am crazy? You're not crazy, you're traumatized. There's a difference. But I could see the doubt creeping in. That's what abusers do. They make you question your own reality until you don't trust yourself anymore. The supervised visitation started that Saturday. 2 hours in a sterile room at a family services center with a social worker watching everything. I drove Mia and Ethan to the first one. The boy had been asking about his father, not understanding why they couldn't go home. When are we going back to our house, Mommy? We're not, sweetheart. We're staying with Grandma now. But I miss my room and my toys. We'll get you new toys. I want my old toys. And I want Daddy. Mia's face crumpled, but she held it together. You'll see Daddy today, just for a little while. We arrived at the center, a low brick building that looked like it might have been a dentist's office once. Inside it was decorated in aggressive cheerfulness, bright colors, children's artwork on the walls, baskets of toys that looked like they'd been donated from a dozen different garage sales. A social worker met us in the lobby. Her name tag said Jennifer. She had kind eyes but a tired smile. You must be Ethan. I'm Jennifer. Your dad's already here. Are you ready to see him? Ethan nodded, suddenly shy. He clung to Mia's hand. Mom can walk you in, but then she has to wait out here. Is that okay? Another nod. I watched them go down a hallway and disappear into a room. Through the window in the door, I could see Marcus stand up, his face lighting up with what looked like genuine joy. Ethan, come here, buddy. The boy ran to him, and Marcus scooped him up in a hug that looked so normal, so loving, that for a moment I almost doubted everything we'd done. But then I saw the way Marcus looked at Mia over Ethan's shoulder. That cold, calculating expression that said, "This isn't over." Mia backed out of the room quickly, and we sat in the waiting area for 2 hours. She barely moved, barely breathed, just stared at the closed door like she could see through it. When the time was up, Jennifer brought Ethan out. He was carrying a new toy truck. Daddy got me a present, and he said we're going to go to Disney World soon. Mia's face went pale. That's nice, honey. Marcus appeared in the doorway, all smiles for the social worker. Thanks for facilitating this, Jennifer. It means the world to me. Of course. See you Thursday. I'll be here. He looked at Mia then, and his smile faded just slightly. He's a good boy. You're raising him well. The compliment felt like a threat. As we drove home, Ethan chattered about his visit. Daddy said Mommy's just confused right now. He said soon we'll all be together again. Mia gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles went white. Ethan, honey, things are different now. We're not going back. But Daddy said, I know what Daddy said, but I want to go home. I want my room. I want Daddy. He started crying, that heartbroken wail of a 3-year-old who doesn't understand why his world fell apart. And Mia started crying too. I reached over from the back seat and squeezed her shoulder. It's okay. He's confused. He'll understand eventually. But I wondered if that was true. Ethan was too young to remember the fear, the tension, the way his mother flinched when his father came home. All he remembered was his house and his toys and his father's smiling face. How do you explain abuse to a 3-year-old? How do you make him understand that the father who gives him presents is the same man who hurt his mother? You can't. You just have to hope that someday when he's older, he'll understand. The second visitation was worse. Marcus brought more presents. A remote control car, a superhero action figure, a chocolate bar the size of Ethan's head. And he asked questions. Where are you staying, buddy? Is it fun at Grandma's house? What's the address? Maybe I can send you more presents. Does Mommy talk about Daddy? What does she say? Ethan, being 3, answered everything enthusiastically, and Marcus pumped him for information like he was interrogating a witness. Jennifer, the social worker, noted it in her report. Mr. Thornton spent significant time asking Ethan questions about Mrs. Thornton's living situation. I redirected him multiple times, reminding him that these visits are for bonding with his son, not gathering information. But the damage was done. Marcus now knew we were at my apartment. He knew Ethan went to preschool on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He knew our routines, and he used that information. On Wednesday afternoon, I took Ethan to the playground near my apartment. Mia was at a doctor's appointment, her first prenatal checkup for the new baby. I'd offered to watch Ethan, happy to have some one-on-one time with my grandson. We were at the swings when I felt it, that prickle on the back of my neck that says you're being watched. I looked around and saw him, Marcus, sitting on a bench 30 yards away, technically outside the 500-foot restraining order radius, but barely. He was wearing sunglasses and reading a newspaper like he just happened to be there. But I knew better. I scooped Ethan up off the swing. Time to go, honey. But Grandma, I want to play more. We'll come back tomorrow. Right now we need to go home. I walked quickly toward my building, resisting the urge to run. When I glanced back, Marcus was still sitting there watching us go. As soon as we got inside, I called Patricia. He was at the playground. He's stalking us. Was he within 500 feet? I don't know. Maybe not. But he was there intentionally, Patricia. He's watching us. Did he approach you or Ethan? No. Did he try to communicate? No, but then legally he hasn't violated the restraining order. I know it feels threatening, Amelia, but unless he crosses that 500-foot line or attempts contact, we can't do anything. So we're just supposed to live in fear. Document everything. Take photos if you see him. Keep a log of dates and times. If he establishes a pattern of stalking, we can go back to the judge and request a wider restraining order. After I hung up, I sat on my couch with Ethan watching cartoons and felt utterly helpless. Marcus was everywhere and nowhere, following us without quite following us, watching without quite watching, staying just inside the legal boundaries while making it clear that he could cross them anytime he wanted. It was psychological warfare, and it was working. Mia started having panic attacks. She'd be fine one moment, then suddenly clutching her chest, hyperventilating, convinced Marcus was about to break down the door. He's going to take Ethan, she'd gasp between breaths. He's going to take him, and I'll never see him again. He's not. We have a court order. Court orders don't stop him. Nothing stops him. I held her while she shook, wishing I could promise her everything would be okay. But I couldn't, because I didn't know if it would be. At night, I lay awake listening for sounds that didn't belong. Footsteps in the hallway, the elevator stopping at my floor, the scratch of a key that shouldn't exist trying to fit in my lock. I bought additional locks for my door, installed a chain, kept my phone charged, and by my bed with Patricia's number on speed dial. We were prisoners in my own apartment, trapped as surely as Mia had been trapped in her marriage. And Marcus knew it. 3 weeks after we left, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello. Amelia, it's Gerald Thornton, Marcus's father. I almost hung up immediately. I have nothing to say to you. Please, just hear me out. I'm not calling to threaten you. I'm calling to apologize. That stopped me. Apologize. For what I said at the restaurant. For clapping when Marcus grabbed Mia. For... He paused, and I heard something in his voice I'd never heard before. Shame. For teaching my son that was acceptable behavior. I sat down slowly. Why are you calling me now? Because my wife is dying. The words hung in the air between us. Patricia has stage 4 cancer. The doctors give her 6 months, maybe less, and she's been asking me questions about our marriage, about whether I ever hurt her, about whether she was happy. Was she... A long silence. No, I don't think she was. I think she spent 50 years terrified of me, and I was too blind or too arrogant to see it. Mr. Thornton, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did to Patricia. I see what Marcus is doing to Mia, and I'm going to testify. Testify. At the custody hearing, I'm going to tell the judge that Marcus learned his behavior from me, that I modeled abuse for him his entire life, that giving him unsupervised access to Ethan would be repeating the cycle. His voice cracked. I can't fix what I did to Patricia, but maybe I can stop it from happening to another generation. I didn't know what to say. This man who'd clapped while his son abused his daughter-in-law was now offering to testify against him. Why would you do that? He's your son. Because Ethan is my grandson, and I don't want him growing up thinking it's okay to hurt the people you love. Someone has to break the cycle, Amelia, and I'm the one who started it, so I guess it has to be me. After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone for a long time. People could change. Even after 50 years. Even after a lifetime of cruelty. It didn't erase the damage. It didn't make up for the decades of fear and pain. But it was something. It was a start. The full custody hearing was scheduled for December 15th, 4 weeks away. 4 weeks to prepare. 4 weeks to gather evidence. 4 weeks of supervised visitations and stalking and social media campaigns. 4 weeks of wondering if we'd made the right choice, if leaving had made things better or just different. But as I watched Mia slowly start to smile again, as I saw the light come back into her eyes, bit by bit, as I witnessed my grandson learn that his mother's fear didn't have to be his normal, I knew we'd made the right choice. Whatever happened in that courtroom, whatever the judge decided, at least Mia was free.